welcome to Performance Anxiety. This is your host, Mark. And before we get into today's show, I just want to take a second and thank AKG for sending us their Podcaster Essentials kit. It's got an incredible Lyra mic and some amazingly comfortable headphones. If you guys have ever thought about starting your own podcast, this is an incredibly economical and high-quality way to do it. Today's show features Tamar Aphek, and she's been called Israel's guitar goddess. Her music is a wild combination of styles and genres. She's fearless and knows exactly what sounds she's looking for. But she didn't start out as a guitar deity. She began her musical journey with piano. Singing came a little later as she joined a prestigious children's choir, but it wasn't until she was 18 that she really started listening to rock music. I learned that she looks at writing a lot like a car crashing into a tree. I also learned that the Israeli version of rock and roll is Hummus. It makes sense, trust me. Tamar's new album, All Bets Are Off, is out now on Kill Rock Stars. Pick it up and follow her on social media for exclusive stuff. Follow us at Performance ANX. Buy us non-committal coffee at ko-fi.com/performanceanxiety. Pick up a mug or shower curtain at performanceanx.threadless.com. And just like a pita chip into hummus, let's dip into the show with Tamar Aphek on Performance Anxiety on the Pantheon Podcast Network.
Hi, I'm Tamar Aphek. I'm a producer, singer, songwriter, guitar player, and keyboard player. My new album, All Bets Are Off, is out on Kill Rock Stars. You can purchase it or stream it in your favorite platforms. I hope you enjoy it, and I hope it will be a good way to open the new year.
So how are you today? I don't get a chance. Actually, I think this is the very first time I've had someone from Israel on the podcast.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, I'm honored to be your first Israeli.
I've been listening to the new album actually for quite a while now. I was really lucky enough to get a copy of it, and it's blowing me away. But before we get too deep into that, I want to know about how you got into music in the first place. So you live in Israel, and that you grew up in Israel. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. When I was at the age of 3 till the age of 7, my father worked in the Israeli embassy in Egypt.
Oh, wow.
So I think it contributed to my musical experience, being exposed to Arabic music from a young age as well.
What kind of music were you hearing growing up? Was there a lot of pop music, or was it, like you're saying, a lot of Arabian music? What were you hearing?
Well, again, between age 3 to age 7, let's say my musical taste wasn't very, actually, it's not exactly true, because I think I always inclined towards music. So
okay.
I even at a young age, I had a great appreciation for it. But I guess when I was in Egypt, I was more exposed to the music of the Egyptian shows, there were a couple of shows with amazing music. But also, I remember, when we went to the market, and I remember being exposed to singers like Farid El-Atrash and Kulthum.
Okay.
And our guards would sing and play this music. So I think I was exposed to it as well. But I would say my main influence as a 7-year-old or 8-year-old was classical music.
Okay.
My dad used to play a lot of classical music, and I started playing piano when I was around 7.
Oh, okay. So your musical experience actually started with piano then, and not guitar.
Yes, that's correct.
And you also sang in a children's choir. Was singing something that came early on to you as well?
Well, I think I was, when I was first exposed to the children's choir, because I heard about it from friends, I think I was just fascinated with the idea of being involved so many hours in music.
Okay.
Since, we would rehearse like 4 times a week for hours.
Oh, wow.
And we had all these, theoretical music lessons.
Yeah.
And we actually toured. It was a pretty famous children's choir. So I think we were also, I can say we toured at a young age. And we would sing with orchestras. So I was lucky enough to watch conductors like Zubin Mehta and Daniel Birnbaum and Kurt Mazur for hours, just looking at them working with the orchestra. So these are the things that fascinated me the most.
And is that what really drew you to study music formally, watching these musicians and these conductors on a day-to-day basis?
Well, I guess I enrolled to a music school till the age of 18. That's my. I didn't go on to the higher institutions.
Okay.
But I think I don't know. I don't feel like I chose doing music. I feel like music chose me.
Yeah. I can understand that. I've heard that several times.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, you're hearing it the first time from an Israeli person.
So you were in the conservatory. Were you studying classical and playing music all day? What was the curriculum like?
Pretty much. I mean, it was a music-oriented school, so we had a lot of music lessons. And as I said, I would finish school around, 2 p.m. and then I had a rehearsal with the choir, at 4 p.m. till 6, 4 times a week.
Wow.
And I had piano lessons. So, it was, I'm sorry, what was the question?
I'm not even
taking me back. I'm very nostalgic.
That's okay. I'm not even really sure there was one. I think I was just curious as to what you were listening to at the time. Was it mainly classical, or were you listening to any rock and roll or pop music in addition to the classical that you were studying?
Well, yes, I was very inside the classical music world. I guess the only rock music I would hear was from watching MTV.
Oh. Okay.
I remember going to the record stores and being fascinated with all these rock albums, but I always felt, it was a time when there was no, there was no Spotify.
Yeah.
So, knowing what to choose, a record was pretty expensive. I don't know, around sometimes $20.
Oh, wow.
So, what record would I choose?
You got to be careful.
I remember for a long time. What?
You've got to be careful if it's that expensive.
You got to be careful, and you got to check and you got to start, picking the albums from the art cover.
Yeah.
It's not so simple.
No, so, you don't want to waste that money.
Yeah, exactly. But it was more about, I guess I felt it wasn't my time yet. And then when I was 18, I just started buying rock records like crazy and started listening to everything like crazy.
Oh, wow.
I guess I was very thirsty for it. I was very amazed from the sound of albums that I suddenly discovered. I think that was the first thing that drew me in, because of the classical music. It's very, there is a pure idea behind it, how stuff need to sound.
Right.
Also, as a classical piano player, when I would play Mozart or Beethoven, the instructions I got was to get inside Mozart's brain, to get inside Beethoven's brain, to give some kind of interpretation to other people. So yeah, it was so suddenly I felt like there was a lot of freedom in this. I started buying like crazy, Led Zeppelin or taking from friends. And actually I started, it's funny because, my album, I signed with Kill Rock Stars, but actually
yes.
I remember the few records I bought at the beginning were a lot of Kill Rock Stars stuff.
Oh, really?
I started listening to Elliott Smith and Unwound and all these guys, Blonde Redhead and Fugazi and Shellac. This was like the thing that really drew me in.
Oh,
and then I, had to compensate for the lack of knowledge I have in the history. So I started, listening to a lot of 70s albums and, starting memorizing, producers' names and engineers like crazy. And wow. I just got addicted, I guess.
So you really dove in. You really kind of took a studious approach to it at that point. You just found what you liked and then worked your way backwards to see who influenced those people.
Exactly, yeah.
You also studied law. Is that related to the music? Or, where do you find the time to do this stuff?
Israel, I remember while I was studying law, my professor used to come to my shows at night.
Oh, wow.
It was, I wasn't, in Israel, the scene was very, very small in Tel Aviv. I think we only had like one venue that knew about bands like, at the time, like Polvo and Fugazi and all that.
Okay.
And it was very, very, very small. And, I started playing guitar. I didn't know if I didn't want to decide that I'm going all the way, because I just started, and I said I'd feel it. And in the meanwhile, I mean, I was also interested in law because I think I felt like I was going to go to some extreme place, for an Israeli girl in Israel to think about touring and to think about taking an electric guitar and blasting the amplifier. Rock and roll in Israel, hummus.
Yes.
The food hummus.
I love it. Yes.
So hummus in Israel, it's a big thing. I think hummus in Israel is like rock and roll in the States.
Oh, really?
I mean, when I toured the States, everything is rock and roll. The music people here and the way that the roads are built. So in the States, it flows in your blood.
Right.
In Israel, at the time, it was more like a far dream,
really?
and an extreme one to take. So for me, I was like, okay, I want to study law, to know the rules, to know how society is built and stuff.
Yeah.
And to feel like I explored, another world. I like exploring a lot, different worlds and different languages. So I felt like it would be cool to study it, but at nights I would go and, play rock and roll shows.
Wow. What is the music scene like there in Israel? You said in Tel Aviv there's basically one place to go. That was 10 years ago. Okay. Today it's much more developed. It's today I think we're all in the same boat kind of, because there are no venues open. Exactly. But the scene in Israel is very developed. I myself produced a festival in Israel that contributed to other festivals that came, and that really enlarged the scene. How did you decide to start a festival? And how does one go about starting a festival? It's a good question. I realized that there were, at the time I used to go to, I went to some nature festivals, and I saw there was this big scene in Israel for nature festivals. And on the other hand, there was like this growing scene of, I would say, maybe 1,000 people in all of Israel that were into this kind of music. Okay. So I just thought, if you take these guys and you take the guys that like nature, they can be at the same place, even though maybe each one of them enjoys other aspects of the events. Mm-hmm. Some people like the idea they can go to nature, and other like the idea of this kind of music. And the people that like this kind of music are mostly, like city mouses. Like they normally don't go out of town. Right. They don't go to these nature festivals, which seem like too hippie for them or something. So I thought it was a good combination, and it was. It proved itself. So how long have you been doing? Well, up until the pandemic, how long was the festival running for? Well, I did the festival only for 3 years, because then I started touring a lot. Okay. I had a band named Carusella. Yes. It was just me and a drummer. So I helped other festivals, but I myself had to stop doing it because I was a lot on the road, and I couldn't put all my energies to that. So yeah, I started touring a lot, and playing music won out. The next chapter. Yeah, I mean, today I feel I'm more concentrated in organizing my music, but I became more in the. I mean, I started being in the last couple of years. I started improving my producing skills. Learning all these music softwares like Pro Tools and Ableton. Yes. Which I felt were important
I think, I would call myself a great rough mixer. I don't know why there isn't a title like that. This last album, I rough mixed it for hours,
Really?
I think I wanted to do it because at the end when you're with a mixer in the room, so you have all these ideas of what you think should be done,
right?
And once you experience doing it yourself for a lot of hours, you already tried putting the bass in the front and the drums in the back. You tried all these kind of options, so I was more relaxed to get into the mixing session.
Okay.
So now my mind is more on the technical sides of music.
Now, I want to know a little bit more about Carousella, because I listened to that album and holy shit, that is heavy. That's amazing. How did you meet up and start playing such incredibly heavy stuff? And were there other bands that sounded like Carousel, or were you guys pretty unique in Israel?
I think we were pretty unique in Israel, certainly for a two-piece band, because it was just a drummer and me on the guitar.
God, it doesn't sound like it. It sounds so heavy and thick.
Yeah, it's interesting what two people can do.
Oh, yeah.
At the time, there was an Israeli band named Monotonics. Did you hear about this band?
No, I haven't heard of them.
So I would recommend also you listen to Monotonics. You will probably like it. I think this was the us and Monotonics. We were the main bands that. They were a three-piece, but the singer didn't play on anything, so it was like a guitar, drums, and a singer.
Oh, wow!
They toured the States a lot. They have an album that was out in Drag City.
Oh, cool! Another great label.
They were known for their really extreme shows, So we used to hang out and kind of influenced each other. And I remember one time Federation X, this band?
Yes. Yes.
So they came to Israel.
Okay.
And I remember when they played in Israel, so that was very heavy.
Yeah.
And I think once we heard them, we were like, okay, let's do heavier. Touring around. I think that's how it works. Sometimes the famous story of Pete Townsend and Jimi Hendrix. When they played together, and Jimi Hendrix had to put his guitar on fire so the show would be better.
Yep. It's a great story.
So it was kind of like, if you play with a heavy band, you got to be heavier.
So was Carousel well received in Israel?
Yes, it was very well received. I think, we would play on the floor, and the whole thing became very theatrical.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, and I just play. I think by the time Carousel came out, I only played guitar for 3 years or 2 years.
Oh, wow.
And I was very into every riff.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm going to believe this riff till I die. I will believe in it.
You are committed to it.
Yeah, I'm totally committed to it. And it was it was a very physical show. You had to be in shape.
I read that they were very intense shows.
Yeah. I
found one track by Shoshana, Troops, which, again, incredibly heavy. That's so intense. it's a little bit different from your new album. Your new album is not as heavy. It's not as brutal as Shoshana and Carousella. But, technically, the guitar playing is incredible. And you've been playing with some amazing, well, I would say rhythm sections, but it's, one guy. So maybe it's rhythm sections even too much of a broad because you're half the rhythm section at that point. But how did you become? Maybe this is a dumb question, but you're really innovative with the guitar. What are some of your inspirations? Because I saw a little clip of you playing a little like Casio type of keyboard on top of your pickups to get a little riff going. Are you doing that out of just curiosity, or is it something that inspired you?
Well, I mean, my guitar playing, obviously, I was influenced by the best guitar players, but I guess it's always a mission to find your own sound and your own character.
Right.
And sometimes you need inspiration for that. So sometimes inspiration can come in the form of a huge Marshall, maybe two boxes if possible.
Yeah. Sometimes
the inspiration can come from a keyboard and the guitar. Sometimes an inspiration can come for a new guitar. I think it's always, I'm always in the search of finding my sound. Every room is different. Every day is different. I feel like sound is a very interesting thing. It brings out different stuff. I mean, I think I always write my parts compared to the sound I have. I mean, the record was recorded mostly at Defton Studios. I remember I was touring the States with this amplifier that I was sure was really shitty. It was like this amplifier I bought for like $200, for the tour, and it was like a Hot Rod DeVille, and I was really like bummed that I didn't have a twin reverb.
Yeah.
In Israel we say I ate my head. I ate my head. I was like complaining all the time that I don't have my twin reverb, and then I remember we entered the and then we went into the Defton Studios, and suddenly the amplifier sounded amazing. I couldn't believe it.
Yeah.
In that room, it's a small room, but just suddenly it was like magic. It was like, oh my God, this is like the best sound I ever had. So, that also brought out stuff in this record.
We'll be right back after a word from our sponsors. Did you write all the music on the new record?
I'm answering your question.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
What did you say?
Absolutely. I was curious on the new album. You've got an amazing bass player, and your drummer is insane. How did you? First of all, have you been playing with those guys very long?
Well, before the recording of the album, I met the drummer.
Okay.
And I think we rehearsed for about 3 to 4 months. When my instructions were play as crazy as you can,
and that's
and we would just play for 4 months as crazy as we can.
Oh wow!
And it's a very intense experience. I think many times I encourage musicians and sound engineers and even graphical designers to do things which for some people may seem odd, but I saw his potential, of being this amazing drummer, and I felt like I wanted, to free him completely. I think many times when, musicians want to play a song, especially these days, when you have the more Ableton attitude, which enables you, to fix things like in the most precise and correct way, things that weren't necessarily possible, like 20, 30 years ago, not to mention, how bands used to record only on tape and didn't have the digital editing option.
Right.
So, I mean, there is something from that time period that I think us musicians can't forget, because so many great records were made. And there is something in the old approach that I like incorporating to today's music. And so I think, we also listen to tons of, Max Roach albums and Miles Davis and a lot of what they call world music.
Okay.
But I prefer not using that word, because,
right, yeah. Yeah.
What's the center of the world, it's debatable. A lot of rhythms that are not necessarily the first rhythms you would think about when you think about rock and roll, maybe more a jazzy kind of approach or rhythms of, Ethiopian rhythms or South American rhythms. So we improvised a lot before we met with the bass player. And the bass player, who is also very talented, I felt like I was doing this play, that I wanted to do this play of rock and roll in a different way than I used to do it. Okay. And I felt like, they are coming on board, as actors, and they did an amazing job. I mean, they got into character and it was an amazing experience.
It sounds incredible because, like you said, you've mixed a lot of different sounds with rock and roll. I mean, there's like reggae or Caribbean beats. There's some jazz and the dirty word world music. You've mixed a lot of that in really unique ways, and the album is very experimental, which you don't hear a lot anymore. I remember growing up in the 80s, a lot of bands were willing to take chances, but once the late 80s hit and 90s, you saw a lot less of that. Bands willing to be fun and try something a little different. You don't see that anymore. And this album is very refreshing in the sense that it goes in a lot of different directions very well.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that was the challenge.
Is there a concept or a theme for the album?
Well, musically wise, you definitely hit the point. I mean, I didn't want an album that sounds the same. I didn't want to have like 10 songs which sound like the first song. So that was like a conscious decision, and I was trying to figure out, how do I do it? How do I bring all these kinds of genres into one album? So I was thinking maybe I should, change the way I look at it. Maybe sometimes the medium the approach to the medium can be confusing. Suddenly I thought of an album more like a movie.
Oh, cool. Okay.
And a lot of the movies, which I like, they have a big range of emotion in them. I mean, sometimes it's scary, sometimes it's sad, sometimes it's happy. It's not always, one state of mind. Right, yeah. So I thought if I could approach, the idea of the album more like that gave me a lot of freedom to play. I can surprise people, for example. Looking at the at the song orders as a surprise element. Like, okay, now they heard that and that and that. What will surprise them now? Well,
I'll tell you what surprised me.
Basically, what would surprise me?
I'll tell you what surprised me was getting my head blown off with Russian Winter opening the album. Holy crap, that song's amazing.
I know I'm gonna lose the war in the sea. I know how big the risk is taking you with me. I'll fight through Russian winter straight into your heart. You say you can see blood, but I plan to miss that part.
Yeah, my attitude with that song was like, okay, let's, edit it like in an electronic kind of way, and fuck it up, as a way that, even though I'm not doing like formal electronic music, let's treat it like it is. It was very fun to edit it. the editing was a big part of this album, and it was really, I was really drawn into that experience. I was really fascinated with it. Well, I mean, that's what digital editing enables you to do. It's amazing.
Yeah, exactly. And it's Russian. Okay, so Russian Winter is very, very heavy, very bombastic, and then you're showing your love for editing here by going straight into Show Me Your Pretty Side, which is a lot softer and more subdued. So right off the bat that this album isn't gonna be all bombast and anger and just getting pummeled to death with riffs. There's a lot of nuance to the album, which you don't see a lot anymore.
Cool. I'm really glad you enjoyed that part. I mean, obviously that was like the risk. That was the challenge. But yeah, I'm glad you thought it worked.
I think it works brilliantly. And from what I understand, you guys, before you went into the studio, you toured for a while to kind of lock the bass and the drums in, but you wouldn't play your guitar in the rehearsals?
Well, when we rehearsed before touring, I didn't play guitar, so I could produce the bass and drum parts. Okay. I was very active in the rhythm section, and obviously, listening to it from the outside enabled me, to get into nuances that if I would play guitar while we're playing together, it's more difficult. I love producing musicians when I play guitar, because I feel like there's this special muscle that you can focus on your vocals and your guitar and also be aware of what the other musicians are doing,
right,
and being able to produce them. It is possible, but it's not as easy, as just listening from the outside and encouraging them in the parts where you think they should be encouraged and opening the debate in parts you think are working less. I think, the main thing was to encourage them. One of the things I like saying to musicians I play with is like, okay, here's the song I'm playing, like guitar vocals, a very, very basic song. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, okay, now think about this song like it's a car. And now let's crash this car in a tree. Now, when people when people look at the car accident, I do want them to realize it was a car, right? Like, I don't want people to think it was like, a motorcycle or a bike. I don't want the accident to be that hard. But, maybe they could even tell. Maybe they can even tell it was a Maserati. I'm not saying. But, let's crush this car. Like, let's not be afraid. Let's crush it. And it's sometimes it's a painful experience, You crush your song and you're like, but it's such a beautiful song. Why do I have to crush it like that?
Right.
But then something more beautiful happens, Then you're making music, because for me, I'm more in the approach that music is like, some people believe that the most important thing is the song, right. The song is the most important thing, and I'm like, fuck the song. I'm like, the song is just an excuse to do music. So I guess the truth is somewhere in the middle.
I love that.
But yeah, I want to do music. I want to have an interesting bass line, and I want it to take me places, and Music is the real thing.
Are the songs on the album? Were you the primary writer, or did Ora and David contribute to the writing of any of the material?
No, I wrote all the lyrics of the song.
Okay.
All the songs.
Yeah. And were they basically ready to go once you went into the studio, or did you guys experiment in the studio by crashing the song while you were in the studio, or had they all been pretty much wrecked while you were on tour?
They were wrecked while we were on tour. I mean,
So you basically had an idea of what you wanted when you went into the studio then? Yeah,
we did. But we did have a lot of freedom,
Okay.
I mean, at one point I started treating the whole thing like, I'm not a big football expert.
Okay.
I'm not an expert at all. But if there's one thing I noticed is that, soccer, more in the soccer world, because football is not really developed in Israel. But if there's one thing I noticed, is how sometimes, they would raise like the coach or if you're Ronaldo, you pick up your hand, and point your finger. Like there are moves, like the first move, the second move, the third move.
Yeah.
So my approach was, started instead of like, taking, a musical part, let's say, okay, I have the verse and then I have like an instrumental and then I have the verse. So instead of like deciding the timeline, when the first verse will end and when the instrumental part will start, I started, we started together, touring, you're together all the time, you start, these people become closer to you than your family,
Right.
So you also start, like getting each other. But I started learning, to give cues from the eyes or from the way my body moves or, from conversations late at night, when you drink. I felt that in the part where you move from that part to that part, finding all like these moments where you can produce it during the tour.
Mm-hmm.
But it was very, it was a conscious decision not to, if you take a song like Drive,
are coming to life. No, these days are no longer about us. So about us as they travel.
we had to drive.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna mathematically break it down because we have a ride to do. I think it's gonna be like 5 kilometers, but I don't know. It might take more. There might be traffic.
Yeah.
I don't know. We have to drive. So So some of the songs are more arranged mathematically than others, but a lot of the post production was very mathematical and. There were, as I said, a lot of edits, and that was the chance, to tighten everything up.
And you wrap the album up with a very sweet rendition of As Time Goes By from Casablanca.
You must remember this. A kiss is just a kiss. A sigh is just a sigh. The fundamental things apply as time goes by. And when two lovers woo, they must say I love you. On that you can rely.
So why did you choose that song, and why did you choose that to end the album with?
Well, as I said before, thinking about the album more as a movie, I think there were a couple of songs, that were, I think, generally speaking, my music, when I wanted to, I will answer a question, but I'll just give a small, I want to say something small before
Absolutely.
that. When I think about, what do I want my listener to experience? I don't think about it normally, but okay. This is something, people ask you. So it's interesting, when I need to think about it, what do I want to make them feel for you? Mm-hmm. And I think, for me, I think, we have so many emotions, during the days, during our daily life, and so many thoughts and so many emotions. And sometimes, I'm thinking about what music does to me. Sometimes I like hearing specific kind of music, when I want to feel something, but I don't have, I'm not going to sit, and feel it. I want to experience something. So, okay, if I'm angry and I listen to, some angry music, so I'm like, oh, cool, this song is legit. My feelings are legit. I can feel this way now. And it's like this passive, active kind of thing you're doing at the same time. So it's like an active listening, right?
Yeah.
So I figured, my listeners, at the point we reach the end of the album, they're gonna go all through this roller coaster of emotions, and I wanted to end it, with a with a hopeful state of mind.
Okay.
Generally speaking, I just loved the song, and I just recorded it, and it was with a bunch of other songs. But suddenly it felt right to close the album with it, because the song is from Casablanca, which is considered the most romantic film of our time. I mean, many times all kinds of magazines crown it as the most romantic movie.
Right. Yes.
And so I figured, so if Casablanca is one of the most romantic music, so As Time Goes By is one of the most romantic songs. But also Casablanca, it's not like the classic love story, right? Like at the end, these two lovers are making a sacrifice, for a greater good that they believe in at that point. So I feel the song also has this kind of feeling, it's like a love song, but I feel it's more like a love song for time. The song is called As Time Goes By. Like the power of time, the power of what time can do. It's amazing how many wounds it can heal.
That's for sure.
How it changes your perspective.
Yeah. How
it enables you to be smarter. So I thought it was pretty like an intelligent love song, and I felt it was hopeful and generally speaking, I believe in love songs. I think we should have as many love songs as possible. It's something that also is missing sometimes, I feel, from today's music.
Yeah, you are
just
absolutely
like
right.
A true love song. It's less about oh, you did this and that to me, but but I'm here, or something like that. Less the blaming game. Just like you love these songs. They were written in difficult times. I mean, songs like Unforgettable. The people that wrote it and sang it, they had a hard life.
Yes, but
still they connected to these emotions. So it's important. I think we have a lot to learn from that.
That's a great perspective that I honestly haven't heard on this podcast ever before. So I'm glad you said that.
Oh, I'm honored you said that.
Well, the album's out on Kill Rock Stars, which is a legendary label. You were a big fan of the label when you started diving into rock. How did you get hooked up with them? Did you send them music, or are they actually out checking out the Israeli musical scene?
I send them my music.
Excellent.
I just send it to them, and it was Slim Moon contacted me, and it was a great day.
Oh yeah,
I love Slim. He's so smart and a special person, and he has a great taste in music.
Well, I think it's awesome that it was...
And a great perspective on music.
Oh, cool. Well, I think it's amazing that was the label that really got you into rock, and now it's your label. I think that is just... I love stories like that.
Like a circle.
Yeah, I love stories like that. It's incredible. So is Israel the new musical hotbed that I need to be looking out for?
Well, it's definitely a place you should be looking out for. I mean, there are very talented people here. I wish the political scene was better, but the musical scene is always developing and always reaching new places, and a lot of talented people in Israel.
Well, you've been called Israel's guitar goddess, and I think that's a really wild title, because the music isn't just, you're not just shredding, you're not just hitting me with all kinds of power chord stuff. Your playing is so varied that title kind of makes sense to me now. Congratulations on reaching the deity status so early on in your guitar playing career. That's amazing. And where can people pick up the album? Because the album's out now. So how can they find it, and how can they buy it?
Well, they can buy it on the Kill Rock Stars store, and on the online store. Mm-hmm. And they can listen to it on Spotify, everywhere. It's on all platforms.
Excellent. And are you guys...
But I do recommend buying the vinyl, because the vinyl is really cool. Well, the cover of the vinyl was made by this great artist named Ben Edge.
Yes.
He also did artwork for Fat White Family, etc. And he's really amazing. So it's nice to get his art.
Well, I've got a copy of the CD, actually, and I love the artwork. I mentioned earlier that the album is so varied and sounds so experimental that it reminds me of albums, 40 years ago where bands were willing to experiment. And the album art kind of reminds me of cool albums from the 80s and 70s. And it's just, so I love the entire package. I think the music in it is amazing. The artwork is really intriguing, and I'm a new huge fan of yours. So I really do appreciate you spending my morning and your afternoon just kind of chatting with me and telling me about how you got into this whole thing. It's been fascinating.
Thank you. Your questions were great, and it's a big honor for me to be on Performance Anxiety. I love you guys, and
thank you so much.
Really a big honor.
Where can people follow you on social media? And are you going to be doing anything with, I don't know if anything in Israel is open as far as live venues and all, but are you going to be doing any live streaming or anything since we're still kind of in the pandemic?
Well, yes, we have plans to do live streaming. I guess it will be happening in the next month or two.
Okay.
On social media, I'm pretty much everywhere on Facebook and on Instagram, and sometimes I upload all kinds of acoustic versions for the songs from the album.
Oh wow!
There's one that's going to be out soon, so yeah, follow me and check it out.
Awesome. Tamar, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you, Mark.